All right. Well, I do think we should begin because it's 6:35 and we have guests and presenters. So, Deborah, do you want to do the introduction or would you?
Yes, I'll
Yeah.
go ahead. My clock is saying 6:33. So, um, we want to start with Anthony Drummond, who is, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for showing up and showing us some support. Unfortunate, Musa is not here yet, but we're gonna move ahead. We're gonna start with Mr. Anthony Drummond, who's the Assistant Director of Government and Community Relations with MTA, with the Brooklyn Bus Network. Anthony, take it away.
Anthony, do you have
Can't hear
anything
you.
to share? Oh, I can't hear you. Hold on.
He just dropped in the chat that his mic isn't working.
He actually put that in the chat. Anthony, do you want us to go ahead with Carm first and slip the order and you can try and do that? All right, great. Let's do that. Carm, does that work all right for you?
Fine for me.
All right, let me share your
Okay.
presentation. I don't want to do this. PowerPoint. View. Play from start. Oh dear, hold on, give me one more second.
The world of technical difficulties.
You know, I'm usually pretty good at this, so I'm a little bothered that this is not working.
I can wing it.
No, I just want to see why it won't play. Carm, why don't you start talking and I will
Yeah.
make it work.
So hi everybody. I'm Carm Bazil, a Chief Advocacy Officer at the New York Public Transit Association. I live in Albany, actually just north of Albany, New York. And before working for NIPTA, I was a member. I was the Chief Executive Officer of the Capital District Transportation Authority, which runs an all bus system in the capital region, 6 counties that surround the city of Albany. So I'm very familiar, obviously, actually, a 43-year career. So I'm very familiar with transit, customers, connections, and trying to use transit to create economic opportunities, both for people and communities. So I retired the first of the year and went to work for NIPTA, basically in a role where I advocate for the transit industry. So one of our members obviously is the MTA, so it's timely that you'll hear a presentation from them. But the association is basically a voice for transit, not only here in Albany at the state capitol, but throughout the state. People are, especially downstate, are surprised to learn that there is transit outside of New York City. It's a little different. It tends to be bus only, not rail, except in the city of Buffalo, which has a light rail system as well. But we advocate for transit throughout the state. Our members include transit systems like CDTA in Albany, the MTA in New York City. Also includes manufacturers and lots of government agencies. So we're always talking and trying to find out the best way to fill the needs of the industry. I mean, no surprise. The biggest need in the industry is money, um, especially upstate, because unlike the MTA, the customer only pays about 25 cents on every dollar. Our ridership is much lower. It's a different type of system than the MTA or the MBTA in Boston. So we're advocating for more money all the time. But really, we're advocating for the industry. We're advocating for our customers. The people who use the service are really who we're advocating for. More service, better service, a higher quality of service. So that requires lots of education among decision makers. I would say that lawmakers in your area are much more astute when it comes to public transportation, because oftentimes they're users as well, or a large portion of their constituency is. But when you get to a city like Ithaca, for example, where Cornell University is located in the middle of the state, ridership may not be as high. So we're educating people about the importance of what we do and why it matters. Although the numbers are smaller, the trip purposes are still the same. So we emphasize connections, economic development, and we focus specifically on access to employment, education, and healthcare. That's why people need better transit service and they need more of it all the time. So as I said earlier, our members include the MTA. It includes mid-sized systems like CNY Centro in Syracuse, CDTA in Albany, and smaller systems. I mean, we're talking 10 bus, 15 bus systems in Watertown, Ithaca, Dutchess County, just north of the city. Our members also include manufacturers, companies that build buses, companies that make parts, so all suppliers to the industry, and lots of consultants who oftentimes make the system go. As I said earlier, I think I said earlier, lots of government agencies, advocates, and interest groups. And we were contacted by your group. We look at this as an opportunity to join forces, to work with you for better service, and more opportunities. Oh, look at that. I'm about halfway through, Sarah, so you're going to have to click it. Yeah, keep going, keep going. Oh, you kind of went way past me. NIPTA structure. There you go, right there, perfect.
Thank
The
you. I'm sorry about that.
that's great. The association's members comprise the board of directors of NIPTA. The board has committees, task force, working groups, and things like that. Our work is organized by an association management firm. They're the behind the scenes entity. Albany is actually filled with lots of association management firms because as a seat for state government, there's lots of associations like NIPTA. In addition, we have our own lobbyist. We have a policy director. We have people like me, an advocacy officer. We're all three of us are part-time employees. Two of us are former transit professionals. The next slide talks about education, training, and events. There's lots of opportunities to develop people, to develop leadership capacities in our industry. These sessions are led by industry experts to encourage learning and share best practices. I can tell you that, like a lot of other industries, the transit profession is having a difficult time finding qualified workers. And when we find them, just like every other industry, they don't stay long. So succession planning is very important for us to sustain our members and their organizations. We have an annual conference and trade show. It's usually in October. It moves around the state. It's mainly for transit managers, professionals, but anyone's invited. So if you're a transit geek or a transit really interested in the industry, I would encourage you to think about attending the annual conference. And you get to see a city that you might not have seen before in the state. The next slide talks about the different policy issues that we focus on. Better and more reliable state funding. for operations and capital needs. The MTA capital program, the 5-year capital program, is $68 billion. The governor says that will be funded in the budget. So we support the MTA and their needs for that. But there's lots of other needs across the state, both operating and capital. Another policy issue that we're focusing on is coordinated action to address climate change and environmental issues, far beyond just electrifying our fleet, working with people to understand the value of having more people using transit and less people in their cars. It's different upstate than it is downstate, really the ratio of people to transit, but the issues are still the same. And we're also advocating for predictable support for transition to zero emission vehicles. We find that legislators really don't understand the issue of electrification. Lots of mandates are floating around about what we have to do and when we have to do it. We want to engage in meaningful discussion about how do we do that and how do we do it so that it's in the best interest of our customers and the best interest of our transit systems. In addition to policy issues, there are advocacy issues, which is on the next slide. We talked about state funding, but for the systems other than the MTA, our operating assistance program, the state operating assistance program, commonly known as STOA, is how we're all funded. Unfortunately, there isn't a 5-year plan for operating assistance in New York State. It's an annual allocation, starts with the governor's budget, and then the work begins with the Assembly and the Senate. So we have to advocate for ourselves every year, which means we're constantly talking about the work of our members and our customers and why the state needs a stronger state operating assistance program. State also provides, like it does for the MTA, capital funding. Our program, the rest of the state's program, though, is part of the New York State DOT program. So it's a little different in different parts of the state. In addition to advocacy issues on the next slide, you'll see how we're funded. Basically, member dues fund the organization. And we also have revenue from conferences, educational activities, and sponsorships. So we're a very small association. The operating budget is less than $500,000, but we think we're pretty strong for our size, and we advocate across the state. And I think our messages are being heard. The impact of the association. Every year we sort of grade ourselves. We give ourselves a report card, and we ask our members to grade us on our efforts to educate, inform, and advocate. That's really how we see our role at the state capitol and into the business community. We've seen significant increases in operating assistance in the last 5 years, and we like to think that we had maybe just a small role to play in the New York, the MTA capital budget. So all good news as far as I'm concerned. It's an exciting time for transit. We're growing. We urge you to get involved. Get involved with the MTA, get involved with NIPTA, learn more about who we are and what we do. And last but not least, thank you for reaching out to us. We were really pleased that you wanted to know more about what's going on around the state and how we work together to support the MTA. Any questions or comments? Hope I didn't move too fast.
Was wonderful. Musa, Deborah, I see a hand. You wanna facilitate? Go for it.
I see Liz has her hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for this presentation. I had 2 questions, and feel free to go as brief or as long, whatever makes sense. One, I guess it sounds like you're very focused on the advocacy at like the Albany level for things. Do you ever, does your organization interface at all with anything that can be done, particularly like around the MTA within the city? I know there's a lot of other things that can happen to help improve bus speeds and reliability, or accessibility to stations and so forth. And some of those programs are kind of through the state and some of them are more through the city. And I was just wondering if you're involved in that and there's anything, you'd like to share about that. My other question was just, you'd mentioned that um, systems outside of the MTA get a lot of support, whereas the MTA, I guess this is my using of the term, is like primarily a fare box recovery. Like they get a lot of their funding through the fare box. I was just kind of curious if there's any insight that you might have. I know you mentioned that some of that funding is, I don't want to say precarious, because I hope, obviously all that funding continues to come through for all of these organizations. But is there any, kind of, we're in a unique situation where you can maybe compare and contrast those different models. Is there, and do is there any insight as to like, if, just because I've heard some discussion with, some of the issues around election, not to be political about it, just hearing about it, that, people are discussing potentially floating, trying to remove fares on more bus lines. There's a pilot for that. Just if there's any insight that you have kind of comparing and contrasting that on, what we would need to do to make sure those systems continue to work.
Hey, Liz, that is the best. You asked about 25 questions in 30 seconds. I'm not quite sure where to start. I'll start with fare box recovery ratio. Talk about contrast, right? My former system in Albany is probably the leader upstate, and we're at 30%. A lot of the real small systems are at 15%. So those systems basically live and breathe, or if you're not careful, die with state operating assistance. So the association really advocates strongly, especially for the smaller systems and even the mid-sized systems like CDTA and the NFTA in Buffalo. 30% is really not a lot. You're looking for 70% to close the gap. The gap is closed by the state operating assistance and then the federal formula money. So we do spend some time talking with our federal representatives, although all of us are members of APTA, the American Public Transit Association, as is the MTA. And then your first question, I'm going to sort of skip to and get to right away. We don't do any city advocacy. We don't think that we're astute enough to understand, frankly, the politics. The MTA does all of that, and agree or disagree, I think they do a pretty good job of navigating their way through city government, city politics. And as far as free fare, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of free fare. I think people should pay whatever the appropriate fare is, and then the transit system ought to design service that works for their different constituencies. If a customer needs a half fare or a free fare program, that I think the transit authority should provide that rather than just say it's free for everyone. I think the MTA I think you should pilot it, but I think you're going down an interesting path. It hasn't worked in most of the cities that it's been implemented in. I hope that is close to an answer.
No, that's helpful. I just was curious about that perspective.
Yeah.
I guess the main other thing is just if people were to ever try to do that, like, is there other ways we can help to, advocate for riders to make sure that service isn't getting cut or something through that? Just, knowing as a community board, we can't really make all these decisions or
No,
anything.
I think
just, your expertise as a
that's
professional.
the road that you go down when you start talking about free fares. The yin to the yang is, well, the transit system goes and cuts 3 routes to pay for the free fares. No one wants that to happen. No, I think really, and we've been very successful here, and I know the MTA has, I think employers should subsidize their employees' fares. The majority of people use transit to get to work, and the employer builds big buildings and parking garages. Those aren't free. And I think every one of them should invest in transit. And we've done a good job throughout the state, our various systems, in getting that to happen. rather than focus on free fare, let's focus on making sure employers get their employees to work free.
Okay, Musa? We can't hear you, Musa.
Your sound's not working for some reason.
Okay, I'll move on to Nina.
Hi, thank you for that presentation.
Hi, Nina.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm just going to make a comment, and that's that having traveled in places all over the world that have magnificent transit systems, they were not free in any of those places. And I think that the fares were at least, somewhere fairly comparable to New York City fares. So I think, yeah, no, there's a certain point of what's reasonable to charge people. But I guess my question is, the buses that you do have in these very, I guess, places where not everybody's going to have a car or be able to drive a car for whatever reason, how accessible are they in terms of, say, people with disabilities, or even maybe something to think about for the future, being able to accommodate bicycles, which, I was on buses in Denmark that could do that.
Um,
Creating kind of a
yeah, Nina, I think you'd be surprised. I'll just speak to the system I ran for 15 years. It's fully accessible. Every bus is low floor kneeler, so people who use wheelchairs or other devices can use the service easily. Bicycles are every bus is equipped with bicycle racks. With a bicycle rack, actually, in Albany, we run our own version of City Bike. So we run the bike share program. Or, excuse me, we ran. I'm retired now. I have to get out of saying we run. I don't do that anymore. But here in Albany, we have our own bike share system. So it's fully accessible and fully integrated with the bicycle network. And actually, we run our own car share program.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Musa?
You guys hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for presenting. I just had a simple question. What are you, in hearing you talk about some of the advocacy you do, what are your most common, I guess, barriers that you have to kind of overcome, the most common pushback that you typically see or deal with, and how do you handle it? Thank you.
Interesting question. I guess my quick answer, top of my head, is you'll often run into a legislator or a business person who says, well, my constituency does not use the service. So therefore, why should I bother? Why should I care? And we often respond to, well, that's probably not true, number one. But number two, even if it were true, let's talk about the other benefits of public transit across the state. Let's talk about the economic impact of the industry as a whole. Let's talk about the fact that we employ thousands and thousands of people who wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for us. So that's a pretty common, especially if you get into the less populated areas. You hear that a lot from legislators and business people. Well, our people don't use your service, so why should we be worried about a healthy public transit system?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nina, you have a question? Yeah, your hand is still up. Okay, anyone else have? Musa, your hand is still up.
It's down.
Sorry.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you inviting us. Hopefully, you'll get to look at our website. And if you're interested in supporting us, please join us.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
You can leave if you want, and you're welcome to stay, but we're gonna move on to the next topic.
Thank you.
Now, next up is Anthony Drummond, the director of. One minute.
Okay. U.S. Assistant Director
Okay,
of Government and Community
okay,
Relations.
Assistant Director, MTA.
Yeah.
So take it.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. Glad my mic is working. Appreciate it. So I don't have a formal like presentation to give, only because it's just more informational. But a couple of things I do want to speak to you all about, and then we can have a conversation, and I'll be happy to take as many questions as you guys have. But the first one I wanted to talk to you all about is upcoming project on the F line, which is going the portion that the work is going to be starting on Avenue P down McDonald all the way to Kings Highway. And I know the line itself, when talking with track, kind of goes along the border of CB14. But felt it was, worthwhile to at least share this information with you because we do have residents in CB14 who do use the F line. Um, what I'll do quickly, if I can, is just share my screen. Um, give you guys a view of what I will be sending out to the community board once we finalize, but I at least want to have that to. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I can scroll in just a little bit more because it's showing. I'm getting used to WebEx because it's showing the kind of off on mine. But as long as you guys can see it, okay. So this is just to give you an idea. Again, we'll be sharing this with the community board once we have it finalized. But just to give you the background of the project, we're doing steel structure painting and steel repair. Again, the system is 120 years old, so a lot of our elevated lines, we're conducting a lot of this work system wide. And the F is definitely one line that is um, fully part of last capital plan and trying to complete that. And we'll extend all the way down the Kings Highway. And then eventually we should wrap up and meet up where we're doing work in Coney Island all the way up to Kings Highway. So it's sort of like meeting in the middle. Um, but it's very general information of what we'll be doing. It'll have some blasting, painting, structural repairs. And this work could be a bit abrasive, and abrasive being there will be some noise, um, some drilling, because we're treating the structure, as if it has asbestos. Again, this was built 120 years ago. So we will have monitoring equipment, as well as what we call MPT to make sure none of this gets out into the air and on the site. So it's going to be a lot of work on here. Timeline wise, it's going to start middle to late May. So project timeline for the first phase of it, we're going to start going from Cotelia Road to Avenue F. That should take about 4 weeks. And also of note, though, we have the estimated duration. We're going to actually have to tweak that because we're hearing from the project team just in terms of materials that they need to have sent over, might push some things back. So the project timeline, as you guys can see, is pretty rough right now, but generally within the scope. So really want to hone in on the first two phases, phase 1 and 2, which is going to be starting actually this month and going into at least mid to late February, maybe early March of next year, from what we're hearing. But we're hoping we can stick within the May to February timeline. And then from there on phase two, which will go from Avenue F to 18th Avenue and Avenue I, will pick up in February and go to June. The first two wanted to highlight and emphasize because this is the first two that are going to be immediate. Though the project timeline for the entire project is going to take until it says May 2027, but we're hearing it'll be August. So it's going to be at least a good couple of years for this work. So wanted to get out early because we are going to be setting up in terms of the project work in the first phase along the line, which you can see highlighted in blue. So that's going to be the work first. And wanted to keep the community board informed. It's going to impact mostly of 12 than it is 14 because I know you guys have a small portion of it. But then again, 14 residents do use the F, so thought it was imperative that the board knows about it and feel free to comment if any questions come up. We will have a project hotline that we will be sending out. But then, of course, if there's some very specific, very like pointed questions, of course, can reach out to the board. And in terms, I talk to Sarah a lot, and it can reach out to me, and I can be able to get those specific pointed questions or comments answered. The work hours will be depending on the weather, generally from 7 to 5. So we want to make sure that's highlighted once this work starts. And quick fast facts. So we service about 600,000 riders a day. I found very, very interesting, but I can see that. And our West 8th Street, which is undergoing some work as the southernmost station in the entire New York City system, subway system, and actually have some work going on that down that way. And the F train is the second longest in the NYC subway system, which runs 27 miles going from Coney Island through Manhattan to Jamaica Queens. So I want to share those. Those were some interesting, fun, fast facts that we wanted to put out. So I'll pause there and take any questions from the committee. Questions, comments on
Okay, I
our
have one. Thanks for
and
that
okay,
presentation.
okay.
When you say 7 to 5 p.m., is this going to be done on the weekends or
These are
during
more
the workday?
great question. We're trying to do most of the work on the weekend, on the weekdays, to avoid weekends, because usually our weekends, which we call GOs or general outage, if we have to do those, that means we will either shut down the line or operate the line in half, as some of you who ride the system knows, and want to try to avoid that as much as possible. There may be a time when that may come up within this project scope, but for the general work of this project, it'll be during the weekdays.
Thank you so much. So it wouldn't affect the trains system as if you were doing work.
Affected, when you say affected in terms of like operating?
Yes, like
Yeah,
the
oh, got
trains
you.
wouldn't be slower. Or is the
They
trains gonna run
act,
on a regular schedule? How does that work?
yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, so they'll run. Trains could be slow, because anytime when we have our contractors or construction folks on the line doing type of work, for safety and precaution measures, our trains do operate at reduced speed, to avoid, as safety being priority number one, any potential accidents and stuff. So that's going to be typical in any work on our tracks and structural repair. The trains just operate a bit slowly wherever that work is being done within that phase or interval. So that will very well happen. And so those when that does happen, we do update and through our apps and through our stations, countdowns and notifications on our boards of, either train work or slower speeds due to train work and stuff like
Thank you. Anyone
that.
has a question? Okay. Oh,
Oh,
Musa is
okay.
Musa, you can go
Uh,
ahead.
what was it?
Hi, thanks for speaking with us. I had two
Mhm.
questions, both of
Sure.
which are not related to the specific project you proposed. So if you don't have the answers today, I understand. One is we are having a construction done on our Church Avenue station to install two
Mm-hmm.
new elevators.
Yep.
I believe the service disruptions were supposed to run through the end of 2024 so that they could build the physical structure on top of
Oh,
the rails. Um,
mhm.
uh, I don't know if it's possible. I'd appreciate an opportunity either now or afterwards to get an update on like where that project is. I see the building.
Mhm.
I walk by it
Mhm.
often, or the
Mhm.
structure, and I
Mhm.
just don't know like what the timeline is for project completion. I had
Sure.
another question, but maybe I'll just go with that and then I'll ask my other one later.
Oh, okay. Actually, that's a great and perfect segue, Musa, because that was actually the other item I was going to speak on to the was regarding the Church Avenue ADA project. So I'll segue to that now. There's no more on the F. I'll stop sharing and
Okay, before
speak
you go
to.
on to the other part,
Oh,
um, Liz had her hand up, so
oh,
maybe.
My question
okay,
is about a different other project, so feel free to come back to me after this.
Oh, okay.
Quick
okay.
question.
I heard another question.
Yeah, is it all right if
Okay,
I have quick questions about the F project you were mentioning?
sure. Yes.
Sure. So the first question is potential traffic pattern impacts, right? So if I understand correctly, um, there's going to be structural work done to
That's
the
correct.
to the overhead line, right? And so my
Correct.
question is it too early for the team to know what potential impacts to, pedestrian and, foot and other traffic that runs beneath that elevated line? And then the second question I have
Right.
is,
Hmm.
and then the second question too is like the asbestos abatement process, because like you said, the steel is centuries old, right? And so in the event that if asbestos is found, what does that process look like? Because that would then be having to take care of abatement outdoors, right? So I'm just wondering if you have answers to these two questions.
Right. So the first one, since the right of way of the F is all going down McDonald Avenue, so pedestrian and traffic access will remain. There will be some barricades that will be put up to help like deviate for pedestrian traffic. Safety jersey barriers will be used for both pedestrian as well as traffic. That work should be starting within the next couple of weeks. In addition to that, there will also, of course, be signages to direct both traffic and pedestrians safely to continue on their path along the street. So that is going to be worked out through our contractor and project team. They should be doing that within, again, the next couple of weeks to do that, but it will not do or have a full closure of the street line because McDonald's a major corridor. So in um, bidding out the contract and doing assessments prior to the work, that was all factored in to make sure that type of work is not as disruptive to keep the flow of traffic going. Again, both pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Um, to your second question, if asbestos is found and would need to be abated or remediated, there is safety improvements put in and factored into that work. And in fact, and again, with this structure and the other structures throughout the systems that are elevated that they're doing this type of work on, they do have, and I can't think of the term of it or the actual word, but when they do find that it's like a system they put throughout, they cover the entire like structure pillar. Um, and they will do that work where it's not exposed out. So it's like an intent. I think of it as like a shell covering that they do, and put on to where they will do all the remediating and abatement of it to remove it safely, without being exposed. I know there's a term for it, and it's not coming to mind right now, but that's what I've been told by our contractors that they will do, for those like pillars and bollards.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right. Okay, so to Musa, the Church Avenue ADA. All right, so just an update on that, and for full context, I have a personal vested in that too, because that's my home station that I get off and see every morning as well. So I've been personally keeping track of that. But they were actually, we had a meeting with the project team last week, for the work, just to get an updated status of where they're at. So, because it was actually supposed to be finished, they had a couple of setbacks, in terms of timeline. They were, as you alluded earlier, supposed to have been done near the end of the year of last year, 2024. And then we were told, that they were hoping to get to this month, May 2025, of wrapping up. But it looks like now the final, when it is all complete, will be quarter 4, which is October of this year. And reason being is because of the work that is being done, and I actually checked it out this morning. They obviously, for those on the platform, it's very narrow, for where they have the, called MTP, the borders placed on, and they're trying to order, um, the materials to where they're installing the elevators. There's been some delay in terms of the shipment, and contractors are, assessing their timeline for that material to be shifted, to be shipped, to make that installation. And so they're behind on that. And then there was one issue which I'm have to follow up on tomorrow, because of some extra, repair of where the actual entrance, for entering, if you're going on the southbound platform to Coney Island, where they're doing that installation there. They just ran into some, I'll say, some roadblocks, in that work. So that put it behind an actual 3-4 weeks. So with all of that, the contractor informed me, that the completion of this work, is anticipated for quarter 4, October of 2025. They are doing some piping installations because I did see that while I was there, and they also need to make that connection. Have, DEP. There's also some electrical work which Con Ed would need to sign off on, and they need to review that. So there was sort of a host of little things there that they're trying to get these sign-offs on and completion done, before they start getting the actual shaft of where the elevators are going to be placed. We do know when that does come up down the line, and probably be during the summer, I'll be informing the community board. Could possibly be a geo work, which we may have to, um, either close the station on a weekend, which will probably preferably than doing, like doing a weekday where we had it completely closed and passengers had to go up to Parkside, so we don't want to do that. So, or do a partial service to where we may just service one side of the platform and not the other. So that's actually being evaluated to when, so they can get those actual shaft work done for both sides of the platform. So that was the update I have for Church Avenue, and that's the most recent as of last Thursday. Any questions?
I don't see any
Nope.
questions. You want to move on to the
Okay.
next? Oh, that was just it.
No, that was actually it. Came to present on both the F train project because that was the big one, and then speak about the Church Avenue ADA. I do know, I will mention too, because I understand this committee as well as the board has been inquiring about the bus redesign network. That will be coming later this fall. We're looking at either late November, early December before that actually starts. Reason being is because they don't want to start the Brooklyn bus redesign network until the Queens, which was recently approved, is in full implementation. It was approved back in early March, and so now they're in the implementation phase for the Queens Bus Design Network, and they're doing it by phases before they're fully done. Once they're complete and is fully implemented on the Queens side, then Brooklyn will start, and that timeline is later this fall, or I'll say winter, because December I consider winter. So yeah. So just stay
Okay, Musa
tuned.
has
I'll
a
keep the
question.
board on. Sure.
Thank you for both the updates. I appreciate it. One question on the
hmm
Brooklyn bus network and timing. When you
hmm
say November, December, I think what that means is that they're going to come in November and December with a final proposal or plan, or is it that in
That
November, December they're announcing what they're doing and then rolling out?
Right. It will be a plan presented. Because I'm not sure, as everyone know, the from the plan they had from 2022, took in a lot of feedback. Our internal bus redesign network that's worked on all the redesigns for the bus networks throughout the city. Um, did some work on the plan, took in the comments, did some reevaluation on certain routes. So they will be presenting in that November, December timeframe what they are telling me, a final plan. And that final plan will receive the comments and feedback, and we're going to do all the open houses and forums and buy-in that was similar to their back in 2022, to get the way in before that is voted on by the board. So that's probably going to, once it starts later November, December, we're looking at a good year of possibly doing that, because obviously if folks have some issues with that final plan, they want to make the tweaks and stuff and changes there before presenting that final one. Timeline for that will probably be a good year, and the board may not vote on that until 2027 if all things go to plan. Because we know this one, the Brooklyn one was definitely very complicated. It's also the largest in terms of the redesign with passenger rights. So there was a lot of feedback that they basically wanted to say Brooklyn for last, because it's going to take a lot of work in terms of getting it approved, the buy-in, and definitely the implementation for the routes that they're looking to revise.
Okay, Musa has his hand up. Okay,
And so
Musa.
just to follow up, sorry. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that
Yep.
update.
Go
So
ahead.
I'm actually kind of surprised at the timeline here. So um we're potentially getting a what I'll call an initial final proposal, which is a proposal of what the plan you want to roll out is subject to more feedback in November,
Mm-hmm.
December. of 2025. Then what we anticipate will be a year of socializing it or getting that feedback at all the different community boards in Brooklyn, maybe the borough president's office, council members, whoever, for all of 26. And then at the end, let's say around the end of 26, I know none of this is in frozen, as none of this is fully decided, but by the end of
Sure.
2026,
Mm-hmm.
beginning of 27, that's when the final announced plan will be. Like the final, we've had everyone's feedback on this plan, and then that will come to a vote
On the final
to the
plan.
community board
Right.
or the council,
The
or
board.
sorry, the board,
No.
okay.
No, it's okay. It's the MTA board.
Oh, the MTA board. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you meant the community
No, it's
board.
all
I was
right.
confused. Oh, I
Yeah.
understand. I
No.
understand. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No problem.
and then once it is passed by the board, I assume, I don't know, this one's really big, I guess, but
Mm.
like how long does implementation take typically? I shouldn't say typically if it's the biggest
Well,
one, but are we talking about a whole year? Are we talking about 6 months? Are we talking about
uh, eh,
2 years?
as we're following very closely of how Queens is going. Um, so Queens was voted on in early March. There's doing implementations there, so they have. So let's see, March, April, May, June. I think probably about 5, 6 months. Um, before it's fully implemented after the board's vote, because I mean they've really started once they approved it for Queens, they went right to it in terms of the redesign. Like they were, at least for Queens, they were very on it. Um, right now, I'm anticipating sort of that same schedule for Brooklyn. Um, uh, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit
Okay.
more, because again, brings is a little. Brooklyn is a more is a bit more complex compared to the other boroughs, and definitely Queens. And it's why they wanted to wait for this borough to be last in terms of the network, because apparently we have the most routes and higher riderships, bus number wise compared to the other boroughs. So, um, and from the previous feedback in the initial plan that was done, there were a lot of comments of I'll just share like the majority were in terms of spacing, having express on certain corridors. There was also, which is on the flip side on operation, not enough in terms of operation. They were infrequent on certain lines, some running once every 40 minutes or something like that. So that was on quite a few lines. So they were reevaluating that. And then also they were trying to figure out lines that had somewhat of redundancy to where they could possibly consolidate. And so the project team internally has been working on that and trying to evaluate that before producing that report that's going to come out later in November, December, that will kickstart our Brooklyn bus redesign. So those were like the main key issues that we were hearing a lot relating to Brooklyn. And hence why they wanted to wait. And then as following with Queens, as they
Yeah,
go through their implement, we probably will mimic that.
that makes sense. It sounds like then you'll be back to the community board. Well, maybe you won't. I don't know. Will you be back to the community board in 2026 for the community
Oh,
feedback
definitely.
or no? Oh, okay, okay.
No,
So the
definitely.
plan
Yeah,
is
no,
announced by end of 25. 2026 is the socializing period. That includes community boards and other people or other stakeholders,
right.
and
All
then
18
roll out in
boards will be heard.
27.
Yeah.
I understand.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no problem.
Any other questions? Okay. Sure, no
All
other
right.
questions?
Well,
Going once, twice?
if
Come on, Carl, you
any
gotta
do
have
come
fun
up,
in there.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Anthony, I have one question for you. I noticed that sometimes on the weekend on the queue, there's like the train doesn't run. This last weekend it wasn't running at all. This
Right.
weekend it ran up to Kings Highway.
Kings Highway. Yep.
Yeah. How long should we expect that to continue?
It's kind of off and on. We're doing there on the queue. There's a lot of electrical work that is being done along the line, and then also to like for this past weekend, it was running the Kings Highway because of the work they're doing down near New York Aquarium, West 8th, and Coney Island Stillwell. The queue line is also next in terms of which finally, thank God, we have a state budget. The capital plan, and it's next to, along with three other lines to get the CBTC, communication-based control system. And so they're getting that work prepared, so they can start that work in the next phase in the capital plan on the queue. So uh, it'll sort of be off and on that they do these geos on the queue lines or general outages. The one that when it was doing where it wasn't running at all, that was because they were doing some station work at the 7th Avenue station, where they just couldn't have any running in any direction. So they basically had the line shut down for that. And this past one running the Kings Highway was because of the work going to Coney Island, but they ran it from Kings Highway all the way up to on along 57th and to 95th Street.
That was good for this weekend. Because, when I have to
Yeah,
go
this
into the
past
city early in the morning, it's hard to get up and have to try to go to the F. Then you get to the F, and then there's more construction over there. And you're like, come on. Can't they just, do it in phases so we don't
that's
suffer
what we're
all?
trying. That's what that's
Okay.
why we're definitely trying that. And we try to work closely within our C&D, which is construction and development. They're the unit
Mm-hmm.
within MTA that handles all the construction, but
Mm-hmm.
system-wide. That means the transit system, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, bridges and tunnels. So they cover the whole gauntlet of the MTA apparatus, but we try, especially from a government community relations point, to like meet with these contractors that are doing this type of work early on. We even like to be part of it. So when we hear from you folks here that who also use this system and don't want to be impacted as much, to like, well, how can we phase this with the least amount of disruption while still maintaining the service and operating, and that could be very challenging again with a system that's 120 years old, and trying to upgrade it to 21st, as much of the 21st century technology that we possibly can, um, and still keep it running. And that it is definitely a challenge. And that's where we try to, if we have to do our outage, we do it. And then, we also are trying hard to, like, if situations like that occur, to do the bus bridges and have more buses to do where we can to fit in. It's a challenge, indeed, to try to minimize, especially on multiple lines.
Yes. Well, thank you for making that clear. No other questions?
All
Okay,
right.
Anthony,
Well,
thank you so much for
you're
coming
very
and
welcome.
explaining this to us, and we really appreciate. I hope that you could come back soon.
Oh, definitely will. And of course, you guys have any questions, Sarah always reaches out to me. So let me know. I'll be happy to look into it. And I'll keep you guys updated very soon, especially on the Church Avenue station. I guess when I get home tonight, I'll take a walk through, because I usually do that, just to see how things are going. So, all right.
All
Thank you
right, thank
guys.
you so much.
All right.
Sarah, is there anything else we
It's
have to discuss?
Deborah, I think we just are trying to make it a practice at the end to make sure we hit our other business item on the agenda. So
Yes.
I just want to open it up in case anyone else has other business to discuss before the committee. Just raise your hand or let me know. All right, seeing none, I think we are good to go enjoy our nights. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right,
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you
take
everyone.
care.
so